So I'm 99% sure that Kawaki is one of those elements in the Boruto Naruto Next Generation story that persons have been consistently impressed with. I'd arguably say that he's one of the best elements, one of the best things to actually come out of the Boruto story, and for a variety of reasons. From his humble introduction in Boruto Manga Chapter 1 or Episode 1 to how he's been presented in the manga as of late, or even the Kara or Kawaki arc in the Boruto Naruto Next Generation's anime, persons have thoroughly enjoyed the character of Kawaki. And more recently in chapter 66, the recent events of that chapter have actually put his character on a path that I feel deserves some discussion going forward. Wagwan everyone, Sanjay Uchiha here and welcome back to the channel. Of course, this video will contain spoilers for the recent chapter or the Boruto manga in general, so if you're an anime only watcher and you haven't read the last 10 chapters, so from chapter 55 to chapter 66, spoilers will be here for this video. But welcome and thank you for the support all the same. Definitely leave a like for your friendly neighborhood Uchiha and drop a comment because of course I want to start a discussion with you guys. So heading into it, Kawaki, as I said, this man is definitely one of the best things to actually come out of the Boruto anime and manga. And as I said, for various reasons, starting with his intro, where it's a strong intro when it comes down to the Boruto story, the man that quote unquote potentially killed Naruto or sent him into some other dimension. Of course, when you start your series like that after the end of a major series like Naruto, of course you're gonna catch a few eyes and ears, to say the least, to tune into your series for the most part. And as we actually progress through the Boruto story and establish the nuances of how Kawaki's character is going to interact with not only the character of Boruto but Naruto and the Uzumaki family and Konoha on a whole, persons start to question, when is Kawaki going to turn, when is he going to turn evil? But as we actually went through the manga up to this point in chapter 66, we've seen that it's not as black and white as we thought when we were just introduced to him in episode 1 or chapter 1. Things are a bit gray, to say the least, and it seems like we are setting up for Kawaki to become more of maybe an anti-hero, more or less, someone that actually has good intentions but probably has questionable ways of actually achieving it from a morality standpoint, which I think makes for a more interesting character for the most part. Now, the brilliance of what chapter 66 setup is actually very interesting, and I kind of touched on this in my Boruto chapter 66 review, because in chapter 66 we see Kawaki actually go up against Borushiki. We find out that Amado actually had placed back the karma on Kawaki without his knowledge and did a bit of psychological manipulation in the process, at least if we're going by what Ida actually deduced. So yeah, points for Amado there. But yeah, Kawaki has the karma once more, and of course, since he was at least 80% Otsutsuki, Isshiki Otsutsuki to be specific, the logical deduction or the logical assumption is that Kawaki can now tap into the power of Isshiki, at least 80% of his power. And the logical conclusion from that is that it actually makes Kawaki, it pushes him to the top 3, if not bar minimum top 10 strongest living persons in the verse at the moment, depending on if there's any other restrictions or rules regarding this new artificial karma. But for the most part, we can safely assume he's at least top 10, at most top 3. If honestly, I would dare to say potentially the strongest person in the verse living right now. So there's that. Now, what makes it interesting beyond him just going and actually killing Boruto is Kawaki's ability to actually steer the narrative right now. It's interesting because for the most part, ever since we were introduced to him, with the exception of manga chapter 1 episode 1, since we were introduced to him in I believe chapter 24 and the Kawaki arc in the Boruto anime, Kawaki's been more of a, how should I say, more often than not, I would say he's more so been reacting to the narrative. He's had to abide by what Konoha says, abide by what Kara says, abide by what Jigen says. abide by what Naruto says for the most part. And even though it's not from a malicious standpoint on the Naruto side, for the most part, he's had to, stand around, um, follow the rules, be a prisoner for the most part. Even though he has a home, he wasn't necessarily a prisoner in Konoha, but for the most part, he's gotten to the point where he has developed a sense of attachment and care for, well, specifically Naruto, but the village, well, probably not even the village, but the Uzumaki household on a whole for the most part. And being put into that situation and still being in a reactionary position when it comes down to the narrative, we've seen Kawaki go to extreme lengths to actually protect those he's come to care about. Now, what actually makes it interesting going forward for the series, especially with Boruto as the main character, quote unquote, alright, not even quote unquote, he's the main character, but with Boruto potentially being taken out of the picture through his quote unquote death, maybe temporary, maybe fake death, who knows. Kawaki is in a position where he's going to be one of the potential center of attention and conflict when it comes down to what's going on in Konoha, whether it be on an emotional or physical level, no matter how you slice and dice it. But the thing is that, in contrast to how he's been positioned in the narrative up until this point now, or especially after losing Karma in the whole Isshiki resurrection mini arc there, Kawaki now has the power to essentially do what he wants. And what makes it actually dangerous in the grand scheme of things is that, as Amado and Shikamaru actually have said in previous chapters, even though he cares about Naruto, it's almost on an unhealthy level right now. And mixing in the fact that he hasn't, transitioned into a healthy appreciation and attachment to Naruto, and you throw in the power of karma now, Kawaki is actually set to become whoever we saw him be, or whoever he is in chapter 1/episode 1, which is actually a pretty interesting nuanced take on how the story is going to develop in chapter 67 and beyond, if you get what I mean. Because no matter what you slice and dice it, there's going to be some emotional conflict with Naruto going back to the village, depending on if they head back to the village like relatively soon. And of course, not only Naruto, with Amado as well, more than likely. And the big thing coming out of this is that Kawaki now has the ability to choose what he wants to do, but more so in an unhealthy fashion, because with everything that's going on with his attachment to Naruto, and we see that he'll do anything to protect the seventh, literally anything. It's anybody's guess how the story is actually going to develop, and that's really and truly the brilliance of how I think they've actually crafted how the story can go forward in a much more nuanced way, at least from the perspective of introducing some, not black and white, but gray. There's lots of gray conflict, if you get what I mean. So it's not necessarily him being good or evil. There's some nuance, there's some gray to it. And it's a nice way to introduce conflict within the story, which has always, for the most part, been what Naruto has kind of strove for as a franchise or a series. And of course, I think it just emphasizes why persons will continue to actually appreciate Kawaki's character going forward and be interested in how he's going to drive the plot and narrative. So yeah, it's going to be very wild. And of course, it can go anyway right now, because going forward, maybe Amado reveals his, partially reveals his true long-term agenda. Maybe Kawaki goes with him, tries to play some double agent kind of deal. Maybe he goes with, I don't know. Well, persons have Boruto being potentially, revived, obviously, and probably going with Ida, or maybe, who knows, maybe Kawaki teams up with Ida or something. The point is, Kawaki is free to choose what he does in the narrative, because he now has the power to do it. So that is one thing that I'm looking forward to seeing how Kishimoto handles with Kawaki at this moment. Because, I mean, yes, Naruto is still powerful, Sasuke is still powerful, but if our assumptions, and they're very educated assumptions when it comes down to how powerful Kawaki is right now, Kawaki doesn't have to be that reactionary character who has to sit around and wait and, you know, allow fate to decide, you know, what's going to happen to him. Do I have to be the character that, oh shit, I have to wait on Naruto and Sasuke to potentially, kill Isshiki, or, you know, Amado, unless Amado plays some, you know, feel safe in that karma or something, who knows, which is, you know, more than likely going to be the case. But if not, you know, I don't have to really listen to Amado anymore, whatever the case may be. I can do what I want. And of course, this can tie into even something Kawaki said more recently in the Boruto manga, when he was, you know, kind of deducing that, you know, Code was working with somebody, of course, Ida. He was kind of tired of persons, you know, wanting to use him for something, you know, malicious, or he's just tired of people using him. So all of these things, I think the introduction of everything that happened in Boruto chapter 66 against Borushiki, having this karma again, there's a lot of ways to look at it from the perspective of Kawaki's like character, his mentality, and what it truly means from, you know, beyond just a power standpoint, even though the power standpoint is very attractive to look at it from. But it is what it is. I think we have a brilliant setup for the future of the Boruto manga this year when it comes on to Kawaki's character. Now guys, of course, let me know if I made any semblance of sense in analyzing how things can be broken down when it comes on to Kawaki's character going forward. Of course, leave a like. I'm open to the discussion, to seeing what you guys have to say, and hopefully we can even discuss how things are going to build up from here to that scene we saw in episode 1, chapter 1. Yes. Sanjay Uchiha here, guys, and hope you guys are having an awesome day. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next Boruto discussion. You know, it feels like I haven't done a discussion in a while. Yeah, see you guys.